Hello, my name is Masitum, and this is Ongeatek's session on Flask Forms or Flask WT Forms. So this session is going to run between January 19th and January 24th, 2026. So if you'd like to join us, join our Discord channel, and we're going to be engaging in this specific topic on Saturday at 9 a.m. EST. So we're going to go through some theory about Flask Forms, and then we will dive into the coding part of this. So before we get started, I thought we'd go through some things that we covered from this specific project. So we created this Flask project. It's a to-do list app, and we started from wireframing, mockups, and the actual project code, and then we learned about Git and GitHub. We also brainstormed over AI ideas for the to-do list app. We redesigned it with Figma and integrated Tailwind to the application. Then we went through a software requirement specification document and where it's important. We also went through user stories using agile methodology, and then we went through UML class diagrams and OOP in Flask projects. So we did all this prior to the winter of 2026. So the agenda of today is to introduce you to Flask Forms, why it's important, how to set it up, how to create a form, how we're going to refactor what we already have with our to-do list Flask application, and then I'm going to list down some of the places that needs to be updated so that it uses Flask Forms. So just a quick introduction. Flask-WTF is a Flask extension that's built on top of Python's WT Forms library. So it has built-in validation and includes automatic error handling and also CSRF protection. And at the end of the day, you're able to implement cleaner working code. So a traditional Flask app would have you using the request.form.get and the specific field when you're collecting data from the user. So what we'd traditionally have is you'd have the HTML form, which would send data to the request form, and then you would do your manual checks before serving it to the database. So with the Flask WTF, you would still have your HTML forms, but then it will send that to Flask Forms, which will do the validation and then save it to the database. So let's look at some of the main things about Flask Forms, or some of the core things about Flask Forms. So the first thing is that you need to have a form class, and this is defined as a Python class. This is where your inputs would exist, and it also defines how you validate and store user input. So an example is this. It's a task form, and it has a name, which is a string field. We'll talk about that next, which is fields. And then we also have a submit variable, which is a submit field called create. So the other thing we have for Flask Forms is the fields, which are the user input types. And you can have different fields, and a couple of them that are commonly used include the string field, the one we've used above. We have text area field, which is for multi-line input fields. We have password field, boolean field, select, and submit field. So each of these fields maps directly to the HTML input. Another core thing about Flask Forms is the validators, or the rules that will be applied on the user input. So some of the common validators include data required. This is when that input cannot be empty. And then we have length, which defines the minimum or the maximum length of that input. And then email, optional or equal to. So this technically replaced the manual if not name checks that you would have on your endpoints. So this is how it looks like. So you have the validators, and then you have your validator, and then you specify if it's required, and if it's the length, then how long it should be. Another thing about Flask Forms is the filters. So this is about cleaning the input before validation. It's able to modify the input before it's validated by either trimming the white spaces, normalizing input, or cleaning data before saving. So we have this example here where we would strip the input off of its white spaces, that is, remove white spaces from the beginning of the end of the input, and then this other part would make sure that in case a field is empty, that the app will not crash. Yeah. And so the other core thing about Flask Forms is the CSRF protection, or the cross-site request forgery protection, which is automatically implemented with Flask Forms. And all you need to do for this to work is to have a secret key, as well as a form hidden tag at the HTML template. So we will get to see this in practice. So why do these forms matter? Why do Flask Forms matter? First thing is security. That's provided by the CSRF. And then we also have input sanitization, as we've seen with the filters. So automatically escaping and doing validation. And then we have field type validation. So if it's an email password, it's inbuilt to check and validate that it's correct. The other reason is there are development benefits, and first thing is that there's a centralized validation, and then we can reuse these forms. Error handling is so much better, and the code is cleaner because it's more organized. And then we have user experience benefits like client-side validation. We have better error messages, and there's form state retention, meaning if an error happens while you filled out the form, it doesn't refresh the whole page. You don't get to lose that data, you just get to make changes to where the issue is. So let's look at the setup. What do you need to actually get set up and start using Flask Forms, Flask-WTF? So first of all, I always recommend that if you're working on a Python project to create a virtual environment, there's steps for that. There's actually a video we have covered this, so please look into I'll attach the video. And then the next thing you do is install Flask-WTF by doing a pip install. Flask-WTF will actually go through this, and then you save. I recommend saving this into the requirements.txt file. After that, you add the configuration into the init.py file. This is where the app initializes. In your case, you could have it at app.py, but in our case, we have it in this file. So you will have the secret key there, and also remember to have your secret key and value listed in your .env file. So in our case, we listed it to get that value from the env file, and then we also included the CSRF protection. You could explicitly have it in there like this, or you could leave it because it's implemented by default. So next thing is to create the actual form. So in our example, we're going to create the form for a task form. So the first thing you do is to create a forms.py file, and we'll do this under the app folder, and we'll include this statement, including we'll import Flask Forms and import all these other fields that we had already talked about: string field, text area field, submit field. And then we'll also import validators, which include data required, length, and optional validators. So if you look at this, we have our task form class that takes in Flask form, and it defines fields like title, description, and submit. So for the title field, its type is a string field type, and it has its name, and then the validators include the fact that it's required, and this is the message that will pop up saying, the task title is required. And then we also have a length validator, which is a minimum of 2 characters, a maximum of 100, and this is the message that will pop up if you fail to follow the rule. And then we also have the filter, just like the one we saw before. So same thing for description, but in this case we are using the text area field so that we have multiple input lines. Its name, the validators include the fact that it's optional, so we've used optional validator, and then the length is a maximum of 2000 characters, and this is the message that you will get if you go above that. And then this is the filter that we've used as well. And lastly, we have the submit field, which is the submit input, which uses the submit field, and its name is save. So that's for the form itself. Then we have to look at the endpoint. So for the endpoint for that specific form, which is going to be used when someone is creating a task, these are the changes that will happen in the backend or at the endpoint. So our endpoint is create task endpoint, and here you can see we've created an object, a task form object. So we imported task forms as well as the other imports that are needed for the endpoints. And then the next thing is we did this if form.validate on submit to validate on submit, and then after that we made sure we collected the data for the title as well as for the description. So we have the form object, which we're creating it here, and then that same object we're going to validate on submit. And then we're going to create a new task object by using the data from the form, from the title, so form.title.data, and from the form's description. And then we're going to have the status of completed to false. Then we're going to add that to the session DB and then commit. And yeah, that's it for the endpoint. So if this is found to be true, then we're going to return the page with the task that's been created. Otherwise, you will be redirected to the same page and you will get the same form object for you to fill again. So this is what you're going to see on the front end. That is your template. I just took a snippet of exactly where the create task part, create new task part is. The index.html page is quite large, so but this is where the new task goes. And as you can see, we have the form tag, form HTML tag, and we have the ID of create task form, and it's a post method, and it's going to call our endpoint, which is create task. So for us to, if you remember correctly, for us to implement the CSRF, we need this part, the form.html tag, which we have it here at the top, and then we have this header and then the div tag, which includes the form label, so form.name label, and then we have the it's supposed to be form.title. So yes, so we have the form.title. This is for the title of the new task, and then this is for the errors. So remember, we talked about error handling, so we'll have an if statement for all the errors, and then we're going to loop through each error, and it'll be shown on the screen. So same for description. We have our label, so form.description.label, and then we have the description input itself, and then we have our styling there. And for the error, same thing happens. We have all the errors, and then we're going to loop through that in the for loop here. And then finally we have our submit, for the submit, and this field is just going to submit the form. So some of the places we are going to need to update in our to-do list app to incorporate the Flask forms include the sign up page, which are going to change it in the signup.html page, and the auth routes.py file, the sign up endpoint. Same for login, forgot password, and so on and so forth. So these are the places that we're going to need to change, and we'll use this as practice to get used to implementing or working with Flask Forms, Flask-WTF. So if you have any questions about this, please leave it in the comment. I'll do my best to respond to each and every one of your questions. Otherwise, we are going to go to the implementation. Okay, so now for the implementation, as I had said before, before we start, it's always good to create a virtual environment. And how we're going to do it is by what we're going to do is, first things first, even before we create the virtual environment, is we are, as you can see, we're on the main branch, sorry. So we need to check out to our individual branch. So we will do I'll call it get tech demo. Flask form demo. Okay, now that we are there, we're going to create our virtual environment, and we're going to do that by doing Python, and we're going to make the environment and call it venv. And then what we'll do next is we're going to activate it by doing source venv bin activate. So if you're not sure if it's installed or not, what I usually do is I just do which Python, and that's able to show me, as you can see here, we have venv bin Python, and that just tells me that I am in the virtual environment. So we're going to go now get started by installing the Flask Forms. We're going to do that by doing pip install Flask-WTF. Okay, so apparently it was already installed, which is okay. And then what we'll do next is we're going to save this by doing pip freeze. This is just good practice to requirements.txt. Sorry. And if you go to your requirements file, you should be able to see that now. So we have it here. Okay. Now we need to configure for the CSRF. So we'll do that by going to the init.py file. Let me just zoom in a bit more. Yeah. So we'll go to the init.py file. In some cases this would be app.py file. It's just where the app is initialized. So we will add we'll configure the secret key for us to use the CSRF protection. So what we'll do is we will do app config and we'll use the secret key, and if you have okay. So that's it, and you'll need to, if you haven't already, which most likely you haven't, so you'll need to go to the .env file and include the secret key. So you'll have the secret key as well as the value, so the key and value pair inside the .env file, so that when you do this, it's able to retrieve that, so that it can be used for the CSRF. So I already have that in my .env file, so I don't need to do that. Another thing, we can explicitly define or enable CSRF, so we can do that by doing up.config and then WTF CSRF enabled, and then we're going to put it as true. So this is good. This means we can use CSRF. So the next thing to do is to create our forms form, and that includes having a forms.py file. So I already have that, and it's under app, so under the app folder. So you create this file, and we will start by importing Flask form. So we'll do from Flask_WTF, we'll import Flask form, and then from WT forms we'll import string field, which we'll need for the title. We'll import text area field. We'll also import the submit field for the submit button. Then we will do the validators. So from WTF forms, WT forms dot validators import, we will need validators like data required. We'll also need the length validator and the optional validator. So now we will go ahead and create the class for the task form. So this is specifically to handle when you're creating a task, so that form that will pop up when you're creating a new task. So we'll do class task form, and then it'll take in Flask form, and then in our class we will have the title field, which is going to be a string field, and it's going to have a title name. It's a title. Then the validators include data required, and in data required validator we will have a message, so that if the user doesn't put anything, it should show that the title is required. So that's the message for that. And then we'll also declare a length. We'll add a length validator, and we will have it with a minimum length of 2 and a maximum length of 100. And we'll also include a message here in the validator, so that it shows that the user that they need, they have to provide at least 2 to at most 100 characters when they're filling in the title. So also, apart from that, we'll also add the filter, and for this filter it'll be a lambda function, like we discussed before. So this one will be used to strip the white spaces before and after the input, and then this will be used to normalize the input, so that in case it's empty or none, then the app won't crash. So that is for the title. So now for the description, we will do the same thing, but in this case we will use the text area field so that we have multi-line input, and then we will have the name as a description. And for the validators, we'll have optional, because it's optional. It'll be optional to have input for that field. And then for the length, we will have a maximum of 2000. And then we'll have a message saying that the description is too long. So if the user provides a description of more than 200 characters, then they will get that error message. And then we will also have a filter that strips off the white spaces and normalizes the input. And then lastly, we will do let's see, something that's missing here, that we will do the submit. So submit will be a submit field, and it will just be called save. So this is it for the form, and we have everything ready in terms of creating a Python class. So now let's go to the endpoint and make sure that it is able to accept and process the data. So we'll go to routes.py, and the endpoint we're going to use is create task endpoint. And if you look at this, we have the request.form.get name. This is the old way of doing things, or like the way we've been doing it. And if you look at it again, you'll see the checks here. So we need to remove this type of validation because it's already done in the front end. And so what we'll do is we will first import forms. So from app.forms we'll import task form, and then we will remove what was there before and create an object from task form, and then from that form we'll validate on submit. And then for the title, okay, so we've decided we're going to remove all of this, so we don't need that. So what we'll do is also change this to title. Okay, and this will also change to actually the autocorrect was wrong, so let me just do it manually. So what we'll do is, so we will do the if statement will still be there, so validate on submit, and once that is validated, then we'll create a new task using the task class, and here we will define the title, which is going to be from form.title.data. So we're going to use the form object to get access to the title and then access that data, and then we'll do the same for description. So we will have form.description.data, and then so we'll also, or none, just in case it's empty. And then we'll also make sure that we have the completed the completed field as false when we are creating a new task object. So this allows us to get data from the form. So this new task will then be used will be added to the database session, and then it will be committed or saved. Okay, let me see. There's a I'm not sure what. Okay, let me just do it one by one. And in this case, we will also have this flash message just showing that the task has been completed successfully, and the user will be redirected to this URL, which is going to take you to a specific task, the task that has been created using its ID. Otherwise, if it's not successful, like the validation is not done, then it'll just take you back to the index.html page, and it'll give you access to the form so that you can fill it up again and then submit. So this is basically it. The other place I would change is or update is the root page. I'll also add the form object here so that I make sure that it's also available for the index.html page when you load the page. So that's it for the endpoint. Now we need to update the front end, and we will do that in the index.html, and we will have to go to where we're supposed to create a new task. So here it is. So this is the let's see, it's supposed to have a form here. So here it is. So this is the form that is currently being used to get user input, and as you can see, it has it's a little bit different in terms of having the label in this way, and then having the required, the validation here. So what we'll do is I'll just copy and paste, because it's a lot of code, and then I'll just go through it step by step. So this is the form. Okay, so same ID, same method, which is a post method, and then same route, which is going to go to the create task. So the difference is first this line, which is for the CSRS protection. So that's one difference. And then the other thing is how you define or declare the label and the input field. So the label is form.title.label, and it has its styling here, and then we have the form.title for the input field, and then we have we're going to check if there are any errors for that field, and if there are errors, we'll go through them one by one and then print that error. So same thing goes for the description. We'll have the form, the description, a label, that style, and then the description itself for the input box. And then we have the if statement to check if there are any errors, and then if there are any, we'll print them one after the other using this for loop, and then show the user that error. And then lastly, we have the form.submit, which is allows the user to submit the form. So let's run this and see how it looks. So we will do run npm run flask, then we should be able to load the page. And if we click create new task, then we can put in a new task title and description. And save it. It'll take you to the specific task page, but we're able to create the task, and we have done that using the Flask Forms. So that is it for this demo. We were able to use Flask Forms to demonstrate how to use Flask Forms, and it's pretty straightforward. I recommend doing a lot of practice on this, once, twice, 3 times, but make sure you join the session this Saturday so that we can go through it again until we're very comfortable with this concept. Thanks for joining me, and happy coding.